Welcome everybody to episode 8 of the Hot Drop. I can't believe it's been that many. And this is again a pretty special episode, I would say. Really different POV, as I was joined by a caster this time, Paperthin, one of the legends of the PUBG casting scene. And we talked a little bit about how he got into PUBG, how he got into casting. We had a long chat about how PGS1 went down, which I thought was super interesting. We chatted a little bit about casting in general, PUBG, Valorant, the differences, the similarities, and lots of other fun stuff along the way. So I think it's a really good episode. It's a long one for sure, but I think it was super nice. And yeah, enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for joining for this episode. I've lost count at this point. I don't even know which number of the episode it is. I should know that. I should have said that in the intro, but I didn't.
That happens.
Super nice to have you here, Paperthin. I can't wait to get us going. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Just got done with my Korean class, so now I'm a little bit. My brain's a little bit frazzled, but no, I'm doing good. Things are going great here in Korea, and it's getting hot. But other than that, life's good.
It's nice. It's like a 7-hour time difference or something.
7 or 8, depending on where you are in Europe. Yeah.
But we did get it going. I want to start with a little bit about you, because I feel like everybody knows you're the PUBG caster. You're the guy from Asia. You do all those regions. You know all those regions. But I feel like most people probably don't know you personally too well. So
Sure.
Why don't you sort of tell us, where do you come from? Where do you live now? How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah. So originally, I was born in America I was born in Illinois, but I spent most of my, youth in Wisconsin, which is the state just north of that. Very cold, frigid place. Snows a lot during the winter. Sometimes it'll get down to like negative 40 Celsius during the winter. So, very, very cold place. But during the summer, it gets very hot. So it's kind of a cool place because it has all 4 seasons. Anyway, I grew up in a very small town, very rural town, like a farming town almost, about 10,000 people. So I didn't kind of start in the big city life or any kind of the normal places I think a lot of esports people start from, whether that be like LA or New York or, East Coast, West Coast kind of thing in America. So
Yeah.
I came from a pretty different standpoint. I grew up, liking competitive video gaming, even when I was in high school, when I kind of realized it was a thing. Actually, the first video game I competed in was X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. Super bizarre, but I was in like a competitive league for that for a little while. But then I went to college, got a bachelor's degree in physics. Then I tried to be a Halo professional for a couple years. Didn't go great. And then I worked in IT for a while. After probably about 10 years or so, a little bit less than that, of working in IT, I decided I had had enough of IT in America, and I decided to uproot my life and move to South Korea. I had traveled here a couple times, really liked it, and had an opportunity to like work at a English language school here for a little while. So I did that. Then on the side, I was doing like proofreading work for Africa TV, one of the big esports companies here. And when PUBG came out, I got obsessed with it. Was playing it every day. Whenever I could find time for it. And Afrika knew this because, we all talk about what games we play and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And they were starting their own PUBG league, the Afrika TV PUBG league. And they needed a caster because they couldn't find anyone else who was available. And they said, we know you play. Would you like to try? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I was friends with like Tasteless and some of the other casters that were working there as well. And so they kind of recommended me, and I put together like a demo reel. They liked it, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's wild. I didn't know that story, and I sort of just assumed, like you were a caster and then you moved to Korea because they needed Asian casters, like Asian located casters or something. I didn't know you worked in IT for so long. That's super cool.
Yeah, I had kind of an odd journey to get here for sure.
Yeah, that's sick. I also have a bachelor in IT. So, I mean, I don't have a bachelor in physics, but I do have a bachelor in IT. So,
yeah,
coming from a similar direction, I guess.
Yeah.
That's cool. I had no idea. I wanted to talk about that later, to be honest. But you already mentioned Tasteless, and I feel like you have gone through in Asia, right? You do a lot of the Asian region in English. You've gone through a lot of co-casters, all super talented, high-profile guys, but it feels like they change every other season. Is there
Yeah.
sort of a reason to that? Is this just that they move on, or why do you think that happens so much?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it was that they have other main games, right? Like Tasteless has StarCraft. Achilleos had Overwatch League. Uh, like Atlas, another guy who was doing some PUBG very early on at OGN, not at Africa TV, but he has
Mm-hmm.
League of Legends, right? So like a lot of the other guys have like kind of their main games that they're contracted to and they can't get out of, right? To do other
Mm-hmm.
work. Whereas I was like PUBG focused from the get go. So
You're the
for me, a
PUBG
lot of
guy.
yeah. So for me, like my schedule is often based around PUBG. Whereas those other guys, they wanted to do PUBG. They liked the game. They all wanted to cast it if possible, but it's generally schedule conflicts were almost
Yeah.
always the reason that I couldn't find someone to keep steady. But now, when we do it here, the last couple years, I've been using State a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He originally comes from StarCraft 2, but he played just like me a shit ton of PUBG, and I really like working with him. He's a good guy, so hopefully, we can keep using him if
You're
there's more
settling
events here in the
down,
future.
so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
hope so.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess that kind of happens, right? Where it's someone else's side gig, but it's your main gig, so the priorities are different, and they just have to move. Yeah, it
yeah,
makes
exactly.
sense. I feel like that's one of the things that are a little bit odd about casting too. Is when you go and do other games, people are very quick to sort of say like, "Oh, he left us for Valorant," or it happened with Pansy. It happened to a certain extent with Hypoc and stuff. You're kind of in that field too, but you're very much still a PUBG guy. I feel like.
Yeah, I try to balance it. I think it's harder for Pansy and Hypoc because like they're the duo for
Yeah,
Valorant right now. Like them and like Sideshow and Bren,
yeah.
and then like Doug and Bala
Hmm.
from NA. So like they're kind of like the people, and then Tom and Mitch as well from EU. But like for them, like there were just too many schedule conflicts, and
Yeah,
like Pansy's in such high demand
yeah,
because she's so good.
yeah,
I mean, let's just be honest.
yeah,
She's like I think she's maybe the best play-by-play caster in the world right now,
yeah,
and I'm not even like legit. She's so good. It's just disgusting.
yeah,
And yeah, so for me, I do really focus on trying to keep a balance, and I do like work very closely with the companies like with Valorant and Riot and things to make sure that I'm able to balance my schedule as much as possible
yeah,
between the two, because I do genuinely love PUBG. I do genuinely want to keep doing it, and so fortunately I've been really fortunate that the people at Africa TV and Riot are really understanding of that, and also in a way like there is that sense, there is starting to be a sense now in the esports companies that it's good to have some diversity in your broadcasting, because it's almost like cross training in sports, right? Where sometimes you just learn
yeah,
other traits or talents or things doing another game. So I think a lot of companies are starting to realize that it's okay to, do
yeah.
multiple esports if you have the time.
100%. I feel like, especially when you think about Valorant and PUBG as an example, right? There's so much you can take away from one and try to transform it to the other. Like I talked to Hypoc about it, and he was like, PUBG is in some ways for a color caster, PUBG is kind of easy because you have so much time to get your points in. In Valorant, you have so much less. There's just constant action. You have to be so much more concise, so much quicker with your points, and then you can try and convert that into your PUBG casting. And also, I mean, it's a second leg to stand on, right? You can't really just expect your casters to 100% commit to your game and just be there forever. And what if your game isn't there forever? Well, that you kind of have to let them
Right.
build that career around multiple games.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the life of, being a freelancer is juggling your schedule and all that. But like he's absolutely right. Like I love what he says because I've had similar struggles going from PUBG to Valorant. Um it's a beautiful part about PUBG is you have a lot of time to talk about the bigger picture ideas, why certain teams prioritize certain locations, why they attacked a facility at this time or this reason.
Yeah.
Like there's so much to break down and you have the time to do it. Whereas he's absolutely right. In Valorant, you have to be so fast, and this took me a while to get used to. And much to, Achilleos, my normal co-caster in Valorant, much to his displeasure at times where I would start running over points and like action would
Yeah.
start happening. He'd be looking at me and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm done. Like, sorry, I've gotten much better about that now, of course, but like it did take some time to adjust. So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with Hypoc on that.
Yeah. And you grow as a caster as well.
Mm.
Now, while we're already on the topic, how do you think work in Valorant compares to work in PUBG? Is it like a little bit more like stable, I guess, because they plan a little bit further ahead? It feels like you kind of know. I think Pansy and Hypoc, for example, they signed a deal for a full year or something. Is it like easier to work with in some senses? Is it harder in others? What do you think?
It's it's mostly easier in a way because they do kind of try to plan for most of the year, and it depends on who you are and what region you are. It varies pretty differently.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I had a pretty good idea by the early part, the first couple months of this year, what at least my casting Valorant in Asia would look like. I don't know. You don't find out about doing like the bigger events usually
Okay.
until months ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they do give you a fair amount of notice, and I'm not saying at all that they don't like respect our time, or it's nothing like that. Obviously they got to figure everything out, so
Yeah.
they do give us plenty of leeway, frankly, for most of the international events if they're going to invite you. Um, but regionally, yeah, I knew pretty much by like Marchish, I guess I would say. No, even before that, February, what my schedule would look like. So that's nice because then when PUBG, excuse me, when PUBG comes to me, I can, you know, I can then
Yeah.
work on balancing it, and I can kind of know pretty well how I can maneuver things. And unfortunately, we're flexible. A lot of the talent, if we need to switch days with each other, most people are generally pretty cool with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's honestly not that different between Riot and PUBG in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to like the big international events, I'd say they're pretty much the same kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But regionally, obviously, I would know if there was like a broadcast for the PWS this year. Obviously, there's not for English. Um, so that wasn't even a concern. I knew they told me pretty early on. Like PUBG's good about at least telling me that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I knew with Riot very early what it was going to look like. But in the past, PUBG's usually done that too, where if there is a planned league like regionally, they'll try to give me all the dates and information pretty early on in the year.
It's just that they don't always manage to plan that far ahead, right? And then
Yeah, so yeah, sure. It just depends, right? There's
it
so many
happens.
moving parts. Yeah.
It I've noticed from the outside, maybe that's just one part that I noticed, but it felt like Riot is a little bit more dynamic with who they pick for their events. Like I've seen, for example, like someone like Shox doesn't get picked for a big league event, and everybody's like in shock because she's the staple. And it feels like they move around a little bit more. They try to keep it a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more competitive. Do you think that's a true statement?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. I mean, I think definitely you know, there's a lot of there's like Riot has a good problem where they have so many people who are
Yeah.
talented broadcasters across so many different regions that I think a lot of times it sucks because like someone like Shox, right? She's so good. Like she is, like you said, a staple. That when she's not in an event, it definitely feels like there's a void because they want to give someone else a chance. You know what I mean? And like there's that balance as a freelancer where you absolutely want to see talent who's got talent. People who are talented get the opportunities, but at the same time, like the model that has worked historically for like
Yeah.
sports, I always talk about sports broadcasting. The model that has worked historically for sports broadcasting is to keep consistent talent once you've found these like the talent that is the people.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a weird interesting time in esports where I think Riot's toying around with different ideas, trying to figure out exactly how they want to work that into the future. um, where do I stand on that? I don't know. I personally, I obviously want to be at like every event possible, so I'm very keen on just putting out the best product I can, and hopefully that
Yeah.
shines through, and you get chosen.
It's a hard thing, right? Because you'd want competition, because competition is usually always good, right? And makes a better product in the end. But then you also want consistency and you want some sort of safety, right? But it just really depends on where you stand in that talent pool, I guess. If you're the one that's getting the events, you obviously don't want things to change. But
Yeah, and this is all, by the
yeah,
way, like my own opinion, like my thoughts on what
100%.
I see from the outside, what Riot's doing, and my assumptions. Like
Yeah,
they don't tell me any of this. Like this isn't. I
yeah,
want people to
yeah,
understand this. This is just me just assuming.
yeah,
And to go to your next point here, I think personally, I get what you're saying. Like competition breeds better products and performances. I'd say sometimes, not
yeah,
always. I think
yeah,
sometimes competition gets toxic,
yeah,
especially in the casting community. It can
100%.
be. So I think personally, I think I am more of the usually stick with what works, what's quality, people who get along with each other mostly, all these things. Generally, I think that's the better option of the two, if you want
Yeah,
my personal opinion.
yeah, it makes sense. I think the answer is probably somewhere in between the two, right? It's not one of the absolutes. You kind of
Yes.
have to work on the situation. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing to think about because there's no obvious answer. But I think um, let's get away from Valorant. Let's talk some PUBG for a bit.
Sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you what you thought about PGS. How did it feel like? Well, how did the event feel to you from like a casting standpoint? What were you like surprised by? What was good? What was bad? Sort of your just whole impression, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally I was very happy with how the event went. I liked being able to cast every day.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm the kind of guy who wants to be there and in the trenches like every day because then I get a better feel for the event. I kind of get into a better rhythm, a better flow. Uh, I just feel more comfortable that way. And even though there is sometimes you get a little tired or whatever, um, generally speaking, that isn't too big of a deal as long as you're not casting like 6 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
So I really like the way that they set it up where it was just each of us did 4 games per day. And we rotated duos. As far as that goes, I did like that. I liked the amount of games we had. I thought that was fair. I thought, basically that ends up being about 2 hours on air
Mm-hmm.
for each person. I think that's a perfect amount of time. Like you don't overstress your voice, you don't overwork yourself. You could stay fresh and all those good things. So from that perspective, I thought things were pretty good. I wouldn't mind having another talent or two at the event personally, just to get a little bit more diversity.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the way I personally would like it is just set duos from the start.
Mm-hmm.
And this is nothing against like Cam or Toby. Like they fucking did great. They were both fucking amazing throughout this entire event. They were just beautiful to work with. Got a great time. But generally, I'd like to have like a set duo from the beginning, just because that way by the end you have a better synergy and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And that's again, this is not an indictment on anybody. This is just personal preference. The venue itself was kind of cool actually. I didn't think I'd like it at first when I first kind of heard about it and saw it, but once I got there, I was okay with it. It was a little small.
Same.
I did. That's the only complaint I really have is that it was kind of small, and we didn't like have a lot of room as like casters. Like we kind of need to have our own space to just like get away from people and not be bothered so we can really focus on the games, have a place where we can watch the games, really focus on them.
Yeah.
And it was a little distracting
Yeah.
at times because we were right out in the open there. So
Yeah.
that would be, I'd say, like the only thing I was kind of
No real green
not
room,
super.
kind of, right?
Yeah, no
Yeah.
real green room, right? And people, I think, like don't understand like what the real purpose is of a green room. It's to like not just to rest, but also to like focus.
Yeah.
Like that's where we can really dial in. But I thought honest to God, it went really well. Like it was really well run. VSPO did the best with what they had, in terms of like the venue and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I have very few complaints, honestly.
I thought the same. I saw the venue at first and I was like, oh, this is rough. And with some of the booths having no AC and some of them being really small and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, I felt like everything was pretty well managed. I feel like everything was really well handled, and we got to play, and the booths weren't a problem, and the space wasn't a problem, and the PCs were fine, and everything. It didn't look great from the start, but I think it ended up being a really nice event.
Fully agree. Yeah.
How do you feel about sort of how the games went down, how the results were? Was there any sort of, what were the big surprises? What were the letdowns? What do you think?
Let me think. I mean, I'll be honest, you guys surprised me. I mean, you guys played like really well
Yeah.
there in the finals. That was so exciting. I mean, such a unique style that you guys bring, that very edge heavy, but not even like in the normal way that teams are edge heavy. You're very spread out. You're kind of everybody's kind of on their own and kind of left to do their own thing and figure out what the best play is from their own perspective, I think is the way I
Hmm.
would kind of look at it, which I ended up thoroughly enjoying by the end. I think most of the teams performed somewhere in the realm of where I thought they would, like Twisted Minds with fifth, another top five for them. They're fucking great. Tiamba probably surprised me a little bit.
Hmm.
I didn't think they'd end up quite so high. I thought they were good, but maybe not quite that good. I thought 4AM would maybe do a little bit better. I'm not surprised at all at 17-1.
Yeah.
That shouldn't surprise anyone at this point. That team's just too
No.
good,
Yeah.
too good. I thought Sonics played pretty well overall. Given all the stuff that was going on with even just in the game, like the hot drops or whether or not that was going to happen. I thought Gunnar did a really good job preparing them for this event, and they were mentally, I thought, in a really good place. Like just talking to the guys behind
Yeah.
the scenes. I think Danawa played about where I thought they would.
Hmm.
Like top three, top four. And throughout the event, probably the most consistent team throughout the event. So I was very happy with that. About where you want it. Any surprises? I gotta think. Like, well, I mean, Petrichor Road, but I told you. Remember, I said they
Yeah.
weren't making the grand finals, so I'm
I
not
was
super
with you
surprised.
on that. I thought they did not look good in China at all. And
No.
I had the same thing with Genji, right? I said they're both kind of one man shows, and then Pio arrived sick as well, wasn't really able to show up. I thought there was a good chance they wouldn't make it, and I thought there was a good chance Pero didn't make it. Genji, I guess, sort of a surprise how well they did for me, at least. I felt like that team was a little bit one-dimensional. LG is
Yeah.
LG is probably the biggest surprise.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I had them locked into top 5. I thought that was one of the best bets to make is LG top 5.
I agree.
Not really sure
I
what
fully
happened,
agree.
to be honest. They played a really bad tournament. I'm not sure why, because I haven't really seen that from them at all. And
Yeah, they were just non-existent in the finals, which was really shocking. I thought Ghibli performed well above my expectations for them.
Yeah.
Like well above my expectations for them.
Yeah.
I didn't think that they would be quite so explosive, but with Heaven catching fire and like a lot of good support play around him,
Yeah.
like the team was like literally like playing around him so well. Like I was like, it's like what Gen G should be doing with PO. I almost thought I'm like just like set this guy up for success and let him just
Yeah.
start ripping heads. So yeah,
I think
I mean, yeah, most of it went about how I expected, but
yeah. I think the difference is kind of that with Ghibli, they have their macro game, they have their structure, and they can hope Heaven or maybe someone else in the future pops off. With Genji, it's like Pio is doing the macro game, and he's also the one that needs to pop off. So there's just way more weight on his shoulders, right? It's not like built around him; he's building around them. So it's probably just way harder to make that work.
yeah,
But yeah, I think Ghibli was
I
really
agree.
good. I think they just needed a little bit. Sometimes in the game, it felt like they were lacking a little bit confidence. Is like not the whole team was not ready to pop off. They weren't ready to dominate fights. It was usually just Heaven, and that kind of held them back a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, there's some experience at like international level on that Ghibli team, but none of them have really had like much success. This was by far, I think,
Yeah.
just about everybody on that team's like best event. And like Glaz, who used to be NEFIX, like he's always been kind of a journeyman, like middle of the road teams in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was some lack of experience there as the event wore down. I think they kind of just ran out of
Yeah.
steam and confidence. But I'm still very happy that the
100%.
Ghibli style still works even with a completely different team. Like that, then you got to give credit to their coaching staff and like the people that are putting it together.
I also think the leaderboard was so close at the end that it's almost like it gives you a false sense of like achievement, because how close was the 3rd place to the 5th place? And if you played one more game, like if Sonics played one more good game, I don't know, they probably could be like 3 or 4 slots above where they finish right now.
Yeah.
So it can, you see an 8th place and you see a 3rd place, but they're not like crazy different compared to like how they did in 18 games. And And it felt like, maybe I just, because I paid more attention, but it felt like one of the most competitive events we've had in a long time, except for 17, who just ran away with it at the end. Everything else felt like super close to me.
I fully agree. This was a really competitive event, like really fun in that a lot of teams had ups and downs. Very few teams had a lot of consistency. Like
Yeah.
if you look at all these leaderboards, like it's pretty all over the place. But that says that there is that, like you're talking about, like just it's so competitive. And there wasn't a team that was just like Navi at PGC that
Yeah.
was just hot throughout the entire event. It's hard to maintain that. Because people make adjustments and, day to day, you never know like how you're feeling. Like Danawa, for example, Seoul was like had major headaches the first like couple days of the grand finals.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was really struggling to like focus and just even like stare at a screen like was hurting his brain, right? Because
Yeah.
he had such a bad headache.
That's
So
rough.
like you never know when things like that come up, that kind of ruin everything or make things a lot more difficult, I should say.
Yeah. Similar for PO, I think, at the start of the event, where he just came in really sick, and then they had 2 really rough days in the group stage. And as soon as he was back on track, they were fine, and they were like a top 8 team, somewhere around that mark.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think, yeah, it was really interesting. Do you know who's IGLing Danawa? Because I'm not
Seoul.
sure. Seoul. Yeah, okay. That
Yep.
explains a lot then. Yeah. Because they,
It hurt them.
they seemed a little more lost than usual in the group stage, for sure.
Yeah.
We met them a few times on rotations, and it felt like they weren't really sure what they wanted to do and where they wanted to go and everything. It was not the Danawa that I watched like dominate Korea, because I had them as like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to put them in S tier or in A tier in my tier list, and then they came to the group stages. I was just like, this doesn't really feel like what I watched in Korea.
Yeah, they were really on point during the group stages. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think just the headaches were making it difficult for Seoul to kind of think in his normal way. And like you could see that, like, they like to do 2-2 splits early, and a lot of times they weren't kind of coalescing in time, and they
Yeah,
weren't kind of moving in their normal positions and their normal ways. So yeah, I definitely agree it hurt them. Who's the IGL for Ascend?
it's Brex.
It's Brex.
Yeah,
Okay, Brexco. Okay, yeah,
he
yeah. I
was.
mean, I was gonna say, like, do you guys even have one? Like, no, I'm
Yeah,
just
no. A lot
I'm
of
just
a lot of the idling comes just straight from him. It's
nice.
everybody plays proactively, everybody gives suggestions, gives info, but a lot of the calls really just come from him and a little bit from Chris, and it's like a back and forth, but it's a pretty classic IGL role, I would say. It's not one of those
Nice.
teams where you have 4 people calling. Now, when
Well,
you
you
say that about
guys,
Soul,
like,
Brex
yeah,
was actually
yeah.
getting super sick on the last day. Like, he had
Oh
fever and
man,
everything. And I was really concerned coming into the last day, because he was done. He came to the venue as late as possible because he wanted to sleep a few more hours. He had a fever and everything, but just powered through it. No problem at all. Just cold and
yeah,
fragged a really, really good last day.
yeah. You guys fragged out on that last day. Like, just looking
Yeah.
across it, I mean, you guys had more than 30 kills, so
Yeah.
that's a pretty good. That's a pretty fucking good day. Like,
I mean, Brex was on track to top frag the event. And I only saw
jeez.
that after day 2. And I was like, how? What like, because I'm not looking at the performance of my players at all. Doesn't matter who gets the kills, right? I'm looking at how the games go, how many points you get, and then I look at the scoreboard, and he was like 2 points behind top fragger or something, 2 kills, and I was just like, that's crazy, that's wild. When you like see how the team works and how many rough games we had and how much people are going like for positions to try and play for the team to figure out something, take a risk so the team can play something, and then you still have such good stats. That was pretty impressive for me.
Well, the risks you were taking were paying off. I mean, like
Yeah,
so many times, like Brex or Crits would like have these solo plays that were just so good.
yeah,
I mean, they would just completely fool other teams. I mean, you could tell the other teams were like, "What in the hell is going on?"
yeah,
Like, you would just watch them, and I mean, you guys play such an unorthodox style, like, at least in the current meta,
yeah,
that I think it caught a lot of teams off guard in the finals where they weren't
yeah.
thinking that the things you were doing were possible.
That's kind of a thing, right? You make a play that seems stupid, but everybody thinks that would be a stupid play. So nobody really sees it coming. Nobody really respects it. And that's a lot of the things we do. It's like a lot of the time the call is I'm doing something dumb, guys. and then we watch over him, and he goes and kills 3 people or something. You know, like it just works. We literally have a call out like for how we push something, and one of the ways to push something is we're just gonna do it dumb, like just fucking drive by, fly over them, do whatever, and it works a lot of the time. So yeah.
Well, that's that experience coming through where you can just kind of rely on guys who've been playing for frickin' forever, on Acend. Like so many of those guys were playing since I can remember.
Yeah.
And like that's where that experience really helps out. Like you guys just kind of like have such a deep understanding of the game, and you can do those things and get away with them because you can react just instinctively, right, to like what needs to happen in a chaotic situation. I think
I said that before is one of the reasons why we struggled so much in the lower bracket. Is because we try to read people and we try to understand what people are gonna do, and then you have like an EXO that's in the phase 3 blue, and they don't really try to rotate in. They just try to get 1 or 2 more kills, and they kill one of you because they're still in the blue when you rotate in on their edge. Or like a GEX that comes in super late and then sits 4-man in shacks, and you lose 2 players. That suddenly your game's over because you don't expect it, you don't respect it to be a thing, and it can really fuck you over sometimes.
So would you say then that like you guys for the finals just kind of started playing your own game instead of trying to play around what other teams were doing? Would that be accurate?
Yes and no. I think in a way we are probably the most like self-centered team. That is a weird word to describe it, but we really don't like study what other teams do as much as others because we don't rely on it. We get our own info. We come in on our edge. We get the information around us, right? We don't have to really know what the other teams are doing as much. But then every time you make a play, you still kind of judge that play based on what others are gonna do. So that ended up biting us in the ass a bit in the lower bracket. And I don't know if we really changed that for finals. I just felt like it was easier to predict because the teams were just more on the same sort of skill level, and the teams were more on the same page about what they do. And then also I think we had a lot of pressure in the lower bracket because we were facing elimination from the tournament, right? And you never want to be in the bottom 8 of 24 teams. That feels terrible. But then as soon as you made finals, you've made the finals, which is already an achievement. And in a way, the pricing and the PGS points and everything was set up in a way where it almost doesn't matter how you do in the finals, as weird as that sounds. A 4th place is just as good as a 16th place almost. You get $4,000 more across the whole team and the org, and you get some PGS points that will only matter if you make PGS 2. So there wasn't a whole lot of pressure to perform in the finals. And I think that really helped us too, because then we were just like playing our game, and we realized, we can win this thing if we just play well. And if we don't win it, that's okay too, and that really helped us sort of pull through in the finals.
Yeah, some teams thrive on that kind of mentality, like that I don't give a fuck. I'm just gonna do what I want, and let's see how it goes. That works for a lot of players.
You still want to win. We all wanted to win. We were all really sad. Like the guys, nobody understands how sad the guys were about getting 2nd place when it's a massive achievement. But we went into the last day and we were like, we either win this thing or we don't. And we don't really care about what else happens, because if we get 30K or 25K, it just people have to understand that's not really anything life-changing. Like the org takes a cut, you divide it by 4 players and a coach. It doesn't really do that much anymore. And having that mentality of we don't really care what happens can really help. So that was really nice for us, for sure.
Yeah, everybody wants to win, but there's like levels of pressure that you feel, right?
Yeah.
Like depending on what event you're at and all that other stuff and what the situation is. So yeah, certainly. I mean, I don't know. I loved watching you guys in the finals. Like I was having a blast just watching you just fuck people up on the edges. Like it was really fun to watch. Like, and then I mean, well, Third Eye in a very different way, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I know they didn't make everybody happy in that grand finals,
but it's also, you can't fault them if it works, right?
No.
I kind of made that tweet where I was complaining about the fact, and I was like, I was saying this has to be the worst thing about PUBG, right? That you can be fighting for seconds, and then the team in 15th place decides to fuck you up, and it can really, really hurt your game. And it kind of sucks that it's a thing, but it's always going to be a thing. There's 16 teams on the battlefield. Like, you're never going to get around it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like, you know, car racing, right? Where like there are certain reasons that like teams will draft with each other, you know what I mean, when they follow the other car, so
Yeah.
they get a little bit extra speed. And like there's a lot of other things that come into play because of the nature of it, because there's more than just two teams, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so many different teams and that kind of thing. So it is part of the game. And like literally the thing I always say is like, look, once the game starts, people can do whatever the fuck they want. Like
Yeah.
if they just want to drop into the ocean and kill themselves, well, we
Yeah.
can't stop that. You know,
Yeah.
like that's just part of the game.
And it's like, there's certain rules about what you can do and what you can't do, but it's impossible to really try and enforce anything. So, it is what it is. And they did what they thought was best. And even if what they think is best is not trying to win the game, then that's still what they thought was best, and that's okay.
I think they just wanted confidence. I think they just wanted to like take fights they could win and at least have something to hang their hats on. You
And
know
they
what I mean?
realized that their normal style was not getting them anywhere. I think they were 16th after day 2 or something, or after day 1, and then they started switching it up, and they got kill points that way. They triggered 17 to completely switch it up, where 17 got ratted by them, and then fully went into defense mode, and just ended up sending center and getting top 3 games in a row or something. And I think what also comes into it is the thing where you try to help your region, right? Because if your region performs well at PGS, you get 1 more PGC slot. So hurting other regions that are competing with Sonics, for example, for a second place makes a ton of sense, right? And
it matters.
Yeah.
Except they kept fighting LG, so that was
yeah. They really ruined LG. LG was really tilted too, I think.
I'm sure. It sucks, but I mean, like, again, that's why I kind of say, like, for Third Eye, like, I think their style was more about just them and their own confidence than it was anything else. Than it was necessarily like their own region, because they probably fucked LG more than anybody.
Yeah,
and like, so like that's why I think like they were just like, look, we got to try something completely different, because what we did wasn't working, like you said earlier. You know, I think it just let's try something different, see how it goes, and it was a little bit better.
Yeah, it was better. It got them higher up on the leaderboard. That is what it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, it feels terrible to watch someone like get drive-byed on their way to the loot spot sometimes, especially when they've had such a bad tournament. But if that can happen to you, then you are making a mistake, right? Like, if someone farms you before you land, then you have made a mistake, and that's just what it is. And there's nothing you can really say against that.
Exactly. I mean, that's part of the game, is to capitalize on like the weaknesses of other teams, or when you're able to make a read on like if they're going to drop somewhere that they think is free, you know, or uncontested, and then you know, Danawa does this. They pick on other teams around Chumacera if they try to drop in those.
Danawa have a stupid amount of space on Chuma. It is crazy what they get, and they bullied their way to it in Korea. And now there was no one on PGS that really had an interest contesting them for it. But it's crazy what kind of space they get. It's wild to me. Because usually
they're very aggressive about it.
It's Chuma and Church. And a lot of Chuma teams have to hot drop for Church. I remember Heroic and BBL going at it for months.
Yeah.
And
right.
It happens all the time. And they get Chuma, Church, and a compound to the north, and I think they loot the crossroads to the west or something. They just have one guy in Chuma. This is super rare.
Yeah.
It's
Who was
crazy.
It was infantry and somebody for a couple PCSs. It might have been Danawa. I can't remember now, but we're battling over that church time and time and time.
Yeah.
I mean, that used to be, but yeah, Danawa now, like, they now claim a lot of that road that runs from, right, Los Leones to Monte Nuevo. Yeah. But the area in between, like, Picado and Monte Nuevo, like, they've claimed a lot of those compounds along that road and basically said, if you drop here, we're gonna fuck your day up. Like,
it's wild, because that is a thing, right? There's a Chuma loot spot, and then there is a BBL split, which is what we call it, because BBL used to always loot there, which is exactly those compounds. Right. And it's kind of just out of the question that there will be two teams looting those two spots in Europe. But yeah, I mean, if you can fight your way to it, you think long term, you commit to it long term, you can do a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff like
Exactly.
that. Yeah. One thing I was really surprised to hear about is that PGS1 was planned in Istanbul. I'm not sure if you heard that, but apparently they were planning to do it in Istanbul until the earthquakes happened, and they had to last minute find a different location, find a different country, find a country
I
without
had
visa issues and all
heard
that stuff.
Right. I had heard that originally they wanted to do it somewhere in like Eastern Europe. I didn't get an exact location.
Mm-hmm.
I was told like Eastern Europe-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they had to change it last minute. Yeah, because I assume because of the, all that stuff is what people are telling me. I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah. I mean,
don't
it's
know
just
for sure.
stories. Um,
Yeah,
but it makes me
but
hopeful. Like we might get a we don't get PGS2. I thought, in my head, I was like, PGC is always going to be in Korea, right? Kind of. That's just kind of where it is. And then PNC, Southeast Asia, felt like it made a lot of sense. We could get one of the PGSs in Europe. Now we're not getting
yeah,
PGS2, but I'm sort of hopeful we could get a PNC then maybe. I just want some sort of LAN in Europe. I just want to see European fans.
I do
Um,
too. I think I hope soon. I hope at the very worst next year.
yeah,
Like I think we would all benefit from having one over there. I mean, the other problem that we're having right now is like, there's the war still going on, and
yeah,
like it's a little bit tough with all the chaos that's going on over there. So, and the other thing is, yeah, visas. You got to find a country that's pretty tolerant of just letting people in to just kind of play the game, and
yeah,
like even like I don't know if any people follow Valorant, but like one of the teams just qualified for Valorant Masters, and one of their players from America can't like get a visa to go to Japan in time. It looks like because they picked him up kind of like mid-season on the team, I guess, and
mm-hmm.
so they didn't really have like time to plan and prep it.
From
And
EG,
so like
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's Demon One is his
yeah,
name, and so like people don't understand like some of these countries are really strict
yeah,
about letting people come into their
yeah,
country even just to play a fucking video game like
yeah,
and so it's tough. Yeah, it's a juggling act, and like a lot of people might get upset that an event is at a certain country or not, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes
yeah.
that people just don't know.
There's so much
You know,
work coming into that, and then it's even worse for PNC because PNC has that whole player selection process, right? Where you have to figure out who's going to be on the team, who are they going to vote for, who's going, who can't go, and then only then you can start the visa process. So it's even slower in that sense. So
right?
it's definitely tricky, but I just really want something to come to Europe. I'm not
I do
expecting a
too.
PGC anytime. I think that's what they're building the arena for and everything, right? So I'm not expecting that.
Well, we'll see. I don't know exactly how many people the arena is going to seat. I mean, obviously the arena will be used for the local leagues,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. We'll see how many people it seats if they're going to use it for a bigger event or
Oh,
not.
okay.
I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. Good
I had
point.
heard like a couple hundred,
Mm-hmm.
which is not bad, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm not. I don't have full details on all of that yet, but I'm excited to see it regardless. But yeah, I mean, like again, like Korea's easy because esports has such a long history here.
Yeah.
Visas are pretty easy to get for people to come here and play video games.
Yeah.
So at least temporarily. So yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I thought for us, in a way, I was a little bit disappointed at the start. That it was sort of a fake LAN in a way, right? We're not playing LAN client, we're playing online. There's no audience. But then in the end, maybe that's a really good thing for a team like us who haven't played a big LAN. And you go from online to a fake LAN, and then you're way more ready for a real LAN with audience on a stage and everything. So maybe that was a really good step in between for us. And I didn't end up minding it at all in the end.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm always gonna want fans there, but at the same time, I was so busy, and it was
Yeah,
like once I got to the studio, like it was like work, 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 work. Like I didn't really notice it too much once I
yeah,
got kind of into it, just because I was you get so focused, like
yeah,
you kind of just tune everything else out, right? Like you're just playing your, for you guys, you're playing the game, or for me, I'm casting the games. Not much else is going on in your world,
yeah.
like yeah, it
I
was
realized that
good.
after too. I talked to a few people and I was like, I should have sort of talked to way more people, but I was just I was just busy. I was busy hanging out with my team, making sure they're doing all right, making sure we're ready for the next games, you know. And even if you're not playing the games, you're focusing on what's next, and you never really lay off. It's not like you're chilling. It's not like you're on vacation. You're just there for work, so you're focused.
I have very little time to do sightseeing at these events.
Yeah.
I mean, like usually it's just I'm there
Yeah.
and I'm working and that's about it. Like we had that one day off in the middle,
Yeah.
between
Between lower
before
bracket
the
and final.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I literally was like Toffees and some of the other guys were like, "Oh, we're gonna like go out and do this stuff and go to the night market and all this other stuff." And like before, like a couple days ahead of time, I was like, "Yeah, it sounds awesome. I want to go out and see the city, blah blah." And then the day came, and I'm like, "I'm just gonna lay in bed and play
Yeah.
Honkai Star Rail on my
Yeah.
phone
Yeah.
and just veg out like
Yeah.
that." That's all I
It's kind
wanted
of
to
how
do.
those events go down. I think people underestimate that. It's like you have a little time for other things, but you don't really have the energy for that many other things. So it's
No,
completely fine to just chill and reset a little bit.
and it's exhausting. Like there's so
Yeah.
much else that's going on that people don't realize. Like for you guys in particular, like you're watching videos, you're planning, you're strategizing, you're talking, and then you come into the day and you got to
There's
do
media
makeup
too,
and
right? There's all that kind
media.
of
Oh my
stuff.
god,
Yeah.
people don't realize how exhausting that is,
Yeah.
and like all this stuff going on, and not to mention then you got to like have the energy to play the games, and then you got to like you get done and then you got to wait 30 45 minutes for the shuttle to get there, and you got to wait for everybody to get on the shuttle, and
Yeah.
all these things add up to really long
You
days.
get to the hotel at 11 and none of the food delivery places are open anymore, so you don't really get anything good to eat anymore. And
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of different struggles that people will never get to see.
Oh, dude, the
Yeah.
first night I got there, my flight got in like super late,
Oh, that was
and
when
I
you didn't
was
have cash, right? And you had to pay the delivery
yeah,
guy. Yeah.
I had to pay the delivery guy in cash. So this is like I couldn't get my credit card to work on the Grab app,
Yeah.
and then I had to have one of the VSPO staff give me cash so I could pay for my food, and then the guy didn't have any like the delivery driver
Didn't have
didn't have
any
any cash
change.
on him, so he didn't have any change. So I'm just like, well, guess you
Yeah.
get like a like $10 tip,
Yeah.
like congratulations, like.
That's honestly, I didn't think about it in the moment, but how is he going to accept the cash payment and not have cash on him? Like,
I
you
didn't.
probably
Yeah,
just got scammed. He was just like, nope, don't have any cash. Sorry.
I was so hungry, I didn't care. I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? Just get out of my face. Just
Yeah. We had the same thing at the start, like the very first day, like where I registered my PayPal, I registered my credit card, and it just wouldn't let me pay at all. So we had to go to like the hotel and get some cash just to
yep.
try and get anything to eat.
The joys of traveling.
Yeah, it's
There's
wild.
always something.
Yeah, still super fun event. I took another week to sort of get to know Malaysia a little bit. It was nice.
Oh, did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Nice.
I want to try and do that most of the time because I feel like if you're flying across the globe to go to Malaysia, I'm probably not gonna do that for another few like for a lot of years maybe. So like make use of it while I'm there, I guess. And
I
VSPO was super chill
genuinely,
about it, about like changing the
yeah, they're
flights and
really
stuff.
cool. Yeah, that's the nice thing is a lot of these companies have figured out that they need to book insurance for the flights so they can change them
Hmm.
just in case something goes wrong with like a team or someone gets sick or
Yeah,
God forbid, something happens like that. Um, just shit happens, right? So they always get insurance for these flights if they're smart, and then they can change them for free,
yeah,
right? So then if you want to stay or I want to stay or whatever, like
yeah,
it's really nice to have that flexibility. I mean, I barely have any time. Like I literally got back to Korea and had to cast like 2 days later
yeah.
for Valorant. Like I had no time to do any like
I
and
feel
that
that.
actually
Yeah,
it ends up being the case a lot. But did you enjoy it? Like did you get to see
100%.
some cool stuff?
We went to like an island. We saw some beaches, nature and stuff. Just the complete opposite of what we did in
Nice.
Kuala Lumpur. It was nice. It's a good reset, I feel like, because I don't I don't think people understand how stressful coaching is, where you're constantly sitting there, you see the game unfolding, you listen to your players, and you have zero power over anything that happens. You're just constantly stressed out. You see Brex is driving into a taking compound. They're talking about how this compound should be free. There's 4 of new happies sitting in there, not peeking the windows. And you're just sitting there like, oh God, please no, please no. But you can't do anything about it. Anything at all. Um, it's so much worse than playing the game or casting or anything. It's really stressful.
We need to get some cameras on you guys, like while you're watching those games out in the lobby, like all the
Yeah,
coaches are there, like just watch you all just like freaking losing your minds. Like
yeah.
what?
There was a game I was watching, and the Howl coach and the owner were there next to me. They were super nice. They even brought snacks for everyone and stuff. They were super
So
super
nice.
cool.
So nice.
And Howl got like 5 kills stolen that game. And every time they did, their manager was like, fuck, just hitting the desk. And I was just sitting there next to him like, I feel for you, man. But it was still kind of comedy. It was still nice.
Yeah. So that's part of the game. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fun. I don't know, like it is pretty interesting, like how emotional everybody gets, and nobody gets like super angry, like nobody's like flipping tables or anything, but
Yeah.
like it is fun to see like how passionate people are, and that's kind of part of the fun, like the ups and downs of esports. Like that's anything with like competition, right? Like regular
100%.
sports or whatever. That's why you love it. So yeah.
And PUBG is even a little bit different because someone can make a really bad play and it hurts you, right? So in
Right.
other games, if an enemy team is griefing, then you win because it's a 1v1. But you can actually have moments where someone doesn't know what to do, they drive into you instead, and you kill them, but it distracts you long enough that you end up dying or something, right? So there is situations like that where you can get really tilted at other teams. That don't really happen that much in other esports, but I feel like in general, PUBG is still a really, really chill, a really nice community, and not a lot of toxicity, not a lot of trash talking going on. At least not what I know of.
Not usually. No.
Yeah.
I mean, from time to time there's some, but it's mostly pretty tame
Yeah.
compared to a lot of other esports. Yeah, I agree with you fully. Like one of the things, like we had our stage host Bella. It was like
Mhm.
her first event, her first esports event, big esports event. She's done a few other things, like on Korean TV. But she had never gone to like a global event like this, so she was kind of nervous. And I was like, "Well, the good news is PUBG is generally pretty chill. Like we've got a good group of guys.
Yeah.
Like our casters are all really cool. We're all really tight. We've known each other for so long. Same with a lot of the players and the coaches and stuff. Like everybody generally gets along at least well enough.
Yeah.
And we have very, very little toxicity. So it is really nice. It's a great community, and
It's
it's
a
really
good
fun to be a part of these events.
100%. It's a good community to come into.
Yes.
All right, we have a rapid fire segment at the end. I'll just shoot you a few questions.
Sure.
The only rule is you can't think about your answers. You can answer whatever you want, just don't think about it for too long.
I'll try not to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So first one is Aches left or Ming Ming?
Ming Ming.
Inonix or Pio?
Inonix.
Damn, I was expecting a Pio. That's nice.
These days, Inonix. If you asked me a year ago, I'd probably say Pio, but
who's the best
Inonix.
PUBG player right now?
I think Soul.
Good answer. What was your favorite PUBG event so far?
PGC 2019.
2019. Who's your favorite talent to work with?
Ooh. For PUBG, Matrim.
Matrim. PUBG or Valorant?
PUBG.
Nice, clear answer. You could change one thing in PUBG. What would it be?
That's
a broad question. It can be
that's
PUBG
a really
esports. It can be the game. Anything.
I think like just more interaction, like in the game client with esports, like what we did sort of in, what was that, 2021 or whatever, where we had like the big screens with like the esports on them, and then like in the game, the client had like a screen with the games going on and the casts and stuff. More of that.
Yeah. What do you think is your biggest strength?
Probably my dedication to the craft of casting, like just trying to be a good caster, not like in terms of like knowing a game like so well that I'm like an authority on it. Well, then I'd be a coach. Working on like being technically a good broadcaster while also knowing the game, of course. But like trying to be that kind of like talent, I guess.
I think that goes really underrated with a lot of the viewers and the players and everything. Is people are like, I like this caster, and people are like, I don't like this caster, but nobody really sort of understands how much work goes into that, right? It's not, you just don't go there and just talk about the game. You know, there's a lot that goes into it.
A ton.
There's a lot of work. What do you think is your biggest flaw?
My biggest flaw is probably that sometimes I get lost in my own thoughts and I start rambling about stuff that's weird or doesn't matter.
I feel that. I feel that very much. I think I'm at a similar spot sometimes where I enjoy talking about PUBG so much. It's hard to stay like concise, and it's hard to just cut it short when it makes sense.
Yep. And that kills me in Valorant. That's like
yeah. It's good practice, I guess, right? We talked about this earlier. Yeah. It's good. It's a good way to learn how to be more concise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I found that a little bit when I was doing some interviews for like PCS 5 and 6 or something, and now for PCS 7. And I want to just sort of paint the bigger picture and be like, that was the situation. I thought that was maybe going through your head. What was really going through your head? But actually, you want to be so short and so snappy. And it's really hard to do that sometimes.
It's the hardest part of being like a color or an analyst type caster. It is kind of weird because I had to sort of shift gears for PGS1, where I was more of a play-by-play type, which I generally do here in Asia, just because there isn't anyone who else like. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't always do that, but I've been doing it more with State at least because he's been pretty good with the analysis role. Like he's picked that up really nicely. But yeah, it is kind of weird to shift gears. Like it was kind of fun that I didn't have to worry about that as much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, kind of
100%.
was refreshing in a way. But yeah, but I mean, it is anyway. Valorant and PUBG are so different in the way that you have to cast them and all this other stuff. And even though I said PUBG, I like it a little bit more. It's like 51% to like 49%, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like just. It's probably only because I've been doing PUBG for longer. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and it's. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, right? It's like part of it is like how much you like the game, but that's only one part of it. It's also how much future does the game have? How well does it pay? How much can you plan ahead? How much job stability, right? Tons of other things. Or like, who are you working with in Valorant? Who are you working with in PUBG? You know, how is that communication? There's just so much that goes into it that people that just listen to the broadcast will never see.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is, I always hated it when people were like trying to shit on casters for leaving to Valorant and something. I was like, you can't fault them for it. It's a massive game, a massive scene. It's how they will push their careers forward, probably.
And it's a great game. It's a really good tactical shooter. Like, like it's really fucking good. I really like the game. Like, I truly love the game. It's great because with PUBG, I have a battle royale that I absolutely love, and with Valorant, I have a tac shooter that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Like it's such a great balance where I'm a shooting game guy almost exclusively, other than like single player like RPGs and weird stuff. But like when it comes to multiplayer games, I only play shooters.
Yeah.
And so like for me, PUBG is my favorite battle royale. Valorant's my favorite tac shooter. It's great.
Same.
Yep.
I was actually looking into stuff like, because I realized I wasn't 100% sure if I could continue casting much as a coach. And PUBG wasn't super sure either, and they weren't super clear about it, so I wasn't really ready. But then they basically said, like, you can't cast anything that your boys are playing. Obviously, it makes sense. But then you're in a position where the TO can't plan with you at all, because you don't know if you guys are going to be in the losers bracket or the winners bracket and everything. So basically, you end up casting no more PUBG PC, or at least not esports. And I was looking into other games, and I was like, Apex is kind of similar. And I've observed quite a bit of Apex, so I kind of know about it, but I just don't enjoy it. I just can't get myself to grind that game and play it for multiple hours a day. So there's nothing I can do about it, really. I can't just be like, I'll try so hard to like this game that I maybe end up casting it, when I just enjoy PUBG, and that's what I want to do, you know?
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, like when Apex came out, I did play a lot of it at the beginning, and I really, really liked it. But over time, I just kept coming back to PUBG, and a lot of my friends kept coming back to PUBG. So that's what I was playing. And it's kind of interesting with Valorant, where I used to play, a long time ago, a lot of CS Source, some CS:GO, but now I don't even want to play Counter-Strike anymore. Like I just have zero desire. I'd rather play Valorant, and
Yeah.
that's not because I cast it. That's genuinely because I like the game better.
Yeah, and it's same for me as well. I rarely play Valorant, but it's basically the other game I play. It's PUBG and Valorant, and then it's just a different environment when you really like the game and you actually want to play it. And then you don't have to study characters because you know them already, and you don't have to try following the esports scene because you do it already, and then it all kind of flows naturally.
Exactly.
Cool. That was really nice. We've already been going for an hour.
Wow. Has it been an hour already? Oh my god.
Yeah. I try and keep these around an hour. I could go on for another, but I think it's probably good.
We should probably
probably good if we call it here. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Sure.
It's been super nice. I think people are gonna enjoy sort of the different POV from a casting standpoint. Because that's
I hope so. Yeah.
It's not one that gets to talk a lot. Or maybe I don't know.
Well, we get to talk a lot, but in a different way.
Exactly.
We don't get to talk in this way very well. Not as much.
Not as much. Not as much.
Mm.
You don't get you don't get interviewed a lot, you know? You don't
No.
Yeah.
Almost never. Yeah. Every once in a while. Yeah.
Very rarely.
Exactly.
Your job is to talk, but then only
in
on
a
broadcast.
very different way. Yeah. Talking about other people while they can't hear me.
Cool. That was super nice. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
I hope you have a good time. When's the next Valorant?
We have the finals for VCT Pacific this weekend.
This weekend. Sick.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. I'll be tuning in most likely.
Hell yeah. It'll be good.
If it doesn't clash with the PUBG. Yeah.
Dude, yeah. Paper X looks really fucking good right now.
Yeah,
so
I've seen it. Yeah.
It's exciting.
They've been cracked. All right. I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Man. Yeah, thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Hope you have a good rest of your week. And later.
Yeah, take care, brother. I'm going to head out, so I'll see ya.
That was episode 8 with Paperthin. Hope you guys enjoyed. I really wanted to show that other POV from the casting side because I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. So I hope you guys find that interesting. And then for the next episode, we have something very special planned, something very different, which I think is going to be super nice as well. But yeah, keep your eyes on my Twitter, on my Discord, Instagram, all that stuff, because we'll be announcing some of that there. This is there's gonna be some new spice coming into the hot drop, I think, and I'm really looking forward to that. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting. We're trying to hit 1,000 subs on YouTube so we can get into that partner program. So please, if you enjoy the content, do subscribe. Using my creator code really helps. It really makes a difference. It does really help sort of get the motivation for this kind of content. And then there's always my Patreon for people that want to provide a little bit of financial support. Next episode's going to be good. Next episode's going to be another banger. So I see you guys there. And hope you have a good rest of your week.